Marble House stands on Bellevue Avenue in Newport, Rhode Island, one of the most extravagant private residences ever constructed in America. The white marble facade, the gilded interiors, the ocean views from manicured lawns. Tourists walk through its rooms today, guided past roped-off furniture and gold-leafed walls. The house appears frozen in 1892, preserved as a monument to Gilded Age excess. But before it was a museum, before it sat empty for decades, before it became a symbol of American aristocratic ambition, it was a home. More precisely, it was a weapon in a social war. The woman who built Marble House spent $11 million in 1890s currency, roughly $350 million today, creating what she called her temple to the arts. She hired America's most prestigious architect. She imported marble and craftsmen from Europe. She filled 50 rooms with treasures purchased on buying trips across the continent. She threw parties that defined an era. Then, she walked away. Understanding why requires understanding Alva Vanderbilt, a woman whose ambitions extended far beyond architecture. The house was never the goal. It was a tool, carefully designed and strategically deployed. Once it served its purpose, she abandoned it without apparent regret. This is the story of Marble House, the formidable woman who willed it into existence, and why she left it behind. If you're interested in Gilded Age architecture and the complex lives behind America's grandest mansions, please consider subscribing. Let's begin with the woman herself. Chapter 1. The Vanderbilt Wife, with ambitions beyond her station. Alva Erskine Smith was born in 1853 in Mobile, Alabama, into a family that understood social position and its fragility. The Smiths were respectable, connected to Southern society through lineage and association. Alva's father, Murray Forbes Smith, operated as a cotton merchant and commission agent. The family lived comfortably. Servants in the household, education for the children, social standing in Mobile's hierarchies. The Civil War changed everything. The Smith family's wealth depended on the cotton trade and the economy it represented. When that economy collapsed, the comfortable life disappeared. The specifics of their losses remain somewhat unclear in historical records, but the result was evident. The family left Mobile and eventually relocated to Europe, where living costs were lower and reduced circumstances less visible to former peers. Alva spent formative years in Paris during the 1860s and early 70s. The experience shaped her profoundly. She observed French society, studied European aristocracy, and absorbed lessons about how wealth translated into social power. She learned French fluently. She studied art, architecture, and the visual languages of status. Most importantly, she developed clear understanding that social position could be constructed, not merely inherited. The Smith family returned to New York in the early 1870s. Alva was in her late teens, educated in European style, fluent in French, and equipped with sophisticated tastes. She was also effectively without fortune. Her family had connections but limited money. In the rigid social mathematics of Gilded Age New York, this created specific constraints and specific opportunities. In 1875, Alva married William Kissam Vanderbilt, grandson of Commodore Cornelius Vanderbilt, founder of the family fortune. The marriage was appropriate by some measures. The Vanderbilts were wealthy beyond measure, but still considered new money by old New York families. Alva brought European, Polish, and social ambition to a family that had railroad money but uncertain social standing. William Kissam, called Willie K by family and friends, was not the primary Vanderbilt heir. His older brother, Cornelius Vanderbilt II, held that position. Willie K inherited approximately $50 to $70 million when his father died in 1885, an enormous fortune, but secondary within the family hierarchy. This positioning mattered considerably in the status competitions that defined the era. Alva's position in 1875 was thus complicated. She had married into vast wealth, but not into automatic social acceptance. The Vanderbilts were excluded from the highest circles of New York society, shut out by Mrs. Caroline Astor and the old Knickerbocker families, who controlled access to the so-called 400, the acceptable people who could fit in Mrs. Astor's ballroom. Alva refused to accept exclusion. In 1883, she planned and executed a costume ball at the Vanderbilt mansion on Fifth Avenue that reportedly cost $250,000. The event was designed specifically to force Mrs. Astor's hand. Mrs. Astor's daughter wanted to attend, but Mrs. Astor had never formally called on Alva, making attendance socially impossible. Mrs. Astor finally capitulated, made the required social call, and attended the ball dressed as a Venetian princess. The ball succeeded completely. Alva had breached the walls of New York society through strategic planning and the deployment of Vanderbilt money. She had demonstrated both social intelligence and willingness to use wealth as a weapon. The victory established her pattern: ambitious goals pursued through careful planning and overwhelming resources. The next target would be Newport.
Chapter 2. Newport, where America's wealthiest families competed in stone.
Newport, Rhode Island, transformed during the decades following the Civil War from a modest colonial port town into the summer capital of American wealth. The transformation was deliberate and comprehensive. Families with fortunes from railroads, finance, mining, and industry discovered Newport's coastal location and relatively cool summer climate. What had been a quiet resort town became a proving ground for wealth display. The wealthy arrivals called their massive estates cottages, a term that grossly understated the structure's scale and cost. These were not cottages. They were palaces, constructed with European materials and designed by prominent architects to evoke continental grandeur. The cottage designation was either ironic or deliberately modest, depending on interpretation. The buildings themselves made no pretense of modesty. By the late 1880s, Newport had established itself as the necessary summer destination for families claiming positions in American high society. The season ran from July through September. Families closed their New York mansions and relocated entire households to Newport. Servants, horses, carriages, wardrobes, everything required for 3 months of concentrated social competition moved north. The social calendar during the season was relentless. Balls, dinners, lawn parties, yachting excursions, tennis matches, and elaborate entertainments followed one another in carefully planned succession. Attendance was mandatory. Absence suggested either financial problems or social decline. The competition was not merely social, but architectural. Each family's cottage made specific claims about taste, wealth, and cultural sophistication. Several significant cottages predated the Vanderbilt's major building period. Ochre Court, completed in 1892 for Ogden Goelet, featured French chateau styling and cost $4.5 million. Chateau-sur-Mer, built earlier in 1852 but extensively remodeled in the 1870s, established precedent for importing European architectural styles wholesale. The Breakers, the original wooden structure built for Pierre Lorillard IV, stood on Ochre Point Avenue before fire destroyed it in 1892. The Belmont family maintained significant presence. August Belmont, representing the Rothschild banking interests in America, built by the sea in 1854. His son, Oliver Hazard Harry Belmont, would later construct Belcourt Castle, completed in 1894, designed to house his extensive horse collection on the ground floor with human living quarters above. The priority statement was deliberate. Mrs. Caroline Astor summered at Beechwood, her relatively modest Newport cottage. The structure was smaller than many competitors' estates, but Mrs. Astor's social authority needed no architectural reinforcement. Her presence in Newport each season validated the location's importance. Where Mrs. Astor spent the summer became, by definition, the correct place to be. The Vanderbilt family presence in Newport was established but not dominant by the early 1890s. Cornelius Vanderbilt II, William K's older brother, began planning an enormous replacement for the burned breakers in 1892. The new breakers would eventually cost $7 million and become Newport's largest and most elaborate cottage. The project signaled Cornelius's intention to claim architectural supremacy in the family and in Newport. This created specific pressure on William K. and Alva. The secondary Vanderbilt line risked being overshadowed by Cornelius's massive project. Alva reportedly had complicated relationships with her sister-in-law, Alice Vanderbilt, Cornelius's wife. The architectural competition between the two Vanderbilt branches was thus both family rivalry and social positioning. Alva decided her response would not attempt to outsize the breakers. Instead, she would outclass it. She would build not the largest cottage, but the largest but the most refined, the most European, the most perfect architectural statement in Newport. She would build a palace.
Chapter 3. Richard Morris Hunt, the architect who understood palaces.
Richard Morris Hunt was born in 1827 in Brattleboro, Vermont, into a family that valued education and European culture. His mother took him and his siblings to Europe in 1843 following his father's death. Hunt studied in Geneva and then Paris, where in 1846 he became the first American accepted into the architecture program at the École des Beaux-Arts, the most prestigious architectural training institution in the world. The École emphasized classical design principles, careful study of historical European European architecture and rigorous technical training. Students learned to design in various historical styles, adapting precedents to contemporary needs while maintaining stylistic integrity. Hunt excelled in this environment, absorbing both technical skill and aesthetic philosophy that would define his career. Hunt returned to America in 1855 and established architectural practice in New York. His timing was fortunate. The Civil War delayed many projects, but post-war economic expansion created enormous demand for architects who could design buildings expressing wealth and culture. Hunt's European training positioned him perfectly to serve clients who wanted continental sophistication. His client list grew to include the wealthiest American families. He designed the Lenox Library in New York, the main facade of the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and numerous private residences. His work consistently referenced European precedents while adapting them to American materials, construction methods, and client needs. He became the architect wealthy Americans hired when they wanted buildings with obvious European cultural connections. Hunt had worked previously for William K. Vanderbilt, designing the family's mansion at 665th Avenue in New York, completed in 1881. That house, inspired by French Renaissance chateau, cost $3 million and established Hunt's relationship with the Vanderbilts. The project's success made him the logical choice when Alva decided to build in Newport. Alva approached Hunt in approximately 1888 with her vision for a Newport cottage that would reference French royal architecture directly. She specified that she wanted a temple to the arts, a structure that would serve as both private residence and public statement about culture, refinement, and aesthetic sophistication. Hunt understood immediately what she intended. The design Hunt developed drew primary inspiration from the Petit Trianon at Versailles, the small palace built for Louis XV in 1762 and later given to Marie Antoinette. The Petit Trianon was a relatively intimate royal retreat, classical in style with Corinthian columns, symmetrical facades, and carefully proportioned rooms. The scale was grand but not overwhelming, refined rather than merely massive. Hunt adapted the Petit Trianon precedent for American circumstances and Alva's specific requirements. He expanded the scale somewhat to accommodate 50 rooms rather than the Petit Trianon's more modest size. He modified the floor plan to include modern amenities including central heating, electric lighting, and updated plumbing systems. He designed service areas that would support elaborate entertaining while remaining invisible to guests. The material selection was crucial. Hunt specified white marble for the exterior walls, not local stone or brick. Marble implied permanence, classical culture, and enormous expense. The choice committed William K. to funding construction costs that would rival or exceed any cottage in Newport.
Chapter 4. Breaking Ground. Building in marble on Bellevue Avenue.
The site Alva selected sat on Bellevue Avenue, Newport's most prestigious address, with ocean access and views. The property, purchased in 1888, measured approximately 11 acres. The location placed the future marble house among existing cottages while providing sufficient grounds for gardens, outbuildings, and the privacy that elaborate entertaining required. Preparing coastal property for major construction presented specific challenges. The soil conditions near the ocean included sand, variable drainage, and relatively high water tables. Foundation work required reaching bedrock or establishing sufficiently stable base to support a marble structure weighing thousands of tons. The engineering requirements were substantial before any visible construction could begin. Groundbreaking occurred in 1888. The foundation excavation proceeded carefully, workers removing soil until reaching stable ground. The foundation itself was constructed from massive stone blocks, creating a base designed to prevent settling or shifting that would crack marble walls. The foundation work consumed months and represented significant expense before anything visible above ground emerged. The marble specified by Hunt came from quarries, whose exact location varied in historical accounts, though American and European sources were both utilized. Transporting marble to Newport required coordination of multiple shipping methods. Stone traveled by rail to coastal ports, then by ship to Newport, then by wagon from Newport's docks to the Bellevue Avenue site. Each piece was heavy, fragile, and expensive. Breaking or damaging marble during transport created costly delays. The workforce assembled for construction included skilled stone masons, many trained in Europe where marble construction techniques were more common than in America. These craftsmen commanded high wages reflecting their specialized knowledge. Supporting them were general laborers for excavation, material movement, and basic construction tasks. The workforce size varied as construction progressed, with peak periods requiring dozens of workers simultaneously on site. Construction proceeded from foundation foundation to superstructure between 1888 and 1892, a timeline of 4 years. This represented relatively rapid construction for a building of marble houses' scale and complexity. Comparable projects often required longer periods, but Alva apparently insisted on completion within timeframes that allowed her to use the house for the 1892 summer season. The cost was extraordinary even by Gilded Age standards. Historical accounts cite approximately $2 million for the house structure itself, with an additional $9 million spent on interior furnishings, decoration, and art. The $11 million total in 1890s currency translates to roughly $350 million in contemporary dollars, though such conversions are imperfect measures across different economic eras. Weather affected construction schedules significantly. New England winters halted or slowed certain types of work. Mortar setting required appropriate temperatures. Stonework in freezing conditions risked damage. The construction therefore proceeded in seasonal cycles, with intensive work during favorable weather and reduced activity during winter months. The rising structure attracted attention throughout Newport. Marble House's location on Bellevue Avenue made construction visible to neighbors and to anyone driving or walking past. The scale became apparent as walls rose. The material choice was obvious. The competitive watching was inevitable in Newport's social environment, where every family tracked every other family's building projects and expenditures. Hunt supervised construction regularly, traveling to Newport to inspect progress and ensure work matched his specifications. Alva visited even more frequently, examining details and demanding corrections when execution failed to meet her standards. The combination of demanding architect and demanding client created pressure on contractors and craftsmen to maintain high-quality standards. By 1892, the exterior was essentially complete. The white marble structure stood finished on Bellevue Avenue, its temple front and classical proportions clearly visible. But completing the exterior represented only partial completion. The interior work, equally important to Alva's vision, was now the focus. Chapter 5. Inside the Vision. Rooms designed to overwhelm. The entrance to Marble House introduced visitors to Alva's aesthetic vision immediately. The entrance hall featured marble walls and floors, creating an impression of cool, classical elegance. The material continuity between exterior and interior was deliberate. This was not a marble facade concealing ordinary construction. This was marble architecture throughout, at least in spaces visitors would see. The Gold Room functioned as Marble House's centerpiece and primary reception space. The room measured approximately 30 feet by 40 feet with ceiling heights approaching 25 feet. Every surface received elaborate decorative treatment. The walls were covered in gold leaf, applied over intricate carved and molded plasterwork. The ceiling continued the gold treatment with additional painted panels and ornamental details. The effect was overwhelming, deliberately so. The Gold Room's design drew directly from royal French apartments at Versailles, particularly the Salon of Hercules and similar ceremonial spaces. The iconography referenced classical mythology, the arts, and allegorical representations of cultural refinement. This was not decoration for comfort. This was decoration as statement, asserting cultural knowledge and unlimited resources simultaneously. The ballroom occupied significant square footage on the main floor. Classical proportions governed the room's dimensions. Marble pilasters with bronze capitals lined the walls, creating architectural rhythm and supporting visual weight. The ceiling featured elaborate plasterwork and painting. The space could accommodate large gatherings for dancing, entertaining, and the social rituals that justified Newport Cottage's existence. William Kay received the Gothic room as his primary space, designed in medieval revival style rather than French classical. Carved oak paneling covered the walls. Gothic architectural details, including pointed arches and tracery, created distinctly different atmosphere from the Gold Room's classical refinement. The choice suggested masculine space contrasting with the feminine elegance elsewhere, though also reflected William's marginally less enthusiastic participation in Alva's cultural project. The library contained books but functioned more as display than study. The room's design emphasized visual impact over functional utility for reading or scholarship. This was common in Gilded Age mansions where libraries served as status indicators, displaying expensive volumes in impressive settings, regardless of whether owners actually read them. The dining room featured walls of Numidian marble, a red-veined stone, creating dramatic visual effect. The dining table, supported by elaborate bronze base, could seat dozens when fully extended. The room communicated both the scale of entertaining Alva intended and the attention to material detail characterizing the entire house. Even functional spaces received elaborate decorative treatment. Guest bedrooms on the upper floors maintained high decorative standards, while being somewhat less overwhelming than public spaces. These rooms featured French period furnishings, silk wall coverings, elaborate plasterwork, and careful attention to creating appropriate settings for important guests. The message was clear. Even temporary residents of Marble House inhabited palatial surroundings. Alva's own bedroom suite featured pink marble details and carved wooden panels. The space reflected her taste while maintaining the house's overall aesthetic consistency. The privacy of family quarters allowed somewhat more personal expression than the rigidly formal public spaces, though grandeur remained the governing principle. Service areas, including kitchens, laundry facilities, and servants' quarters, occupied less visible portions of the house, primarily on the ground floor and in attic spaces. These areas featured modern equipment for the era, including improved cooking ranges, updated plumbing, and systems designed to support elaborate entertaining. The service infrastructure was extensive, necessary to operate a 50-room mansion at the level Alva demanded. The technological systems integrated into Marble House represented advanced thinking for 1892. Central heating using steam or hot water systems eliminated dependence on fireplaces for warmth. Electric lighting throughout provided modern illumination, though gas fixtures were maintained as backup. Modern plumbing included multiple bathrooms with running water and flush toilets, luxuries still uncommon in 1892. The house was complete. Now came its intended purpose: social conquest.
Chapter 6. August 1892. The housewarming that defined an era.
Marble House officially opened in August 1892 with a ball designed to announce Alva's architectural achievement to Newport society and establish the house as the season's most important setting. The guest list included the core of New York's 400 Newport summer residents and carefully selected members of the social elite whose attendance would validate Alva's success. Preparation for the evening required weeks of planning and days of intensive work by dozens of servants. The house, though complete, needed final arrangements for hosting, furniture placement, floral decorations, lighting adjustments, catering coordination, service staff briefings. Every detail received Alva's attention and approval. Nothing was left to chance or subordinates' judgment. The flowers alone represented significant expense and effort. Elaborate arrangements filled public rooms, creating visual spectacle while demonstrating seasonal availability and hothouse cultivation. The orchids, roses, and exotic specimens displayed throughout the house communicated well through the ephemeral luxury of perfect flowers displayed for single evening's entertainment. The menu for the evening, prepared by caterers brought from New York, featured multiple courses of French cuisine, with wines selected for each course. Service proceeded according to formal protocols, with trained staff executing complex choreography of courses, wine service, catering, and table maintenance. The dining represented culinary theater as much as nutrition, performance demonstrating sophistication and continental influence. Guests arrived in formal evening dress, men in white tie and women in elaborate gowns with jewelry selected for maximum display. The entrance sequence through Marble House's front doors into the entrance hall and then to the Gold Room created deliberate progression of increasing grandeur. Each space revealed more elaborate decoration, building to the Gold Room's overwhelming aesthetic assault. The Gold Room functioned exactly as Alva intended. Guests entering the space reportedly gasped or fell silent, confronting the visual intensity. The gold-covered walls and ceiling, the elaborate ornamentation, the sheer material excess created effect unlike anything else in Newport. This was the room's purpose: to overwhelm, to impress, to establish without question Alva's ability to create continental magnificence in America. Mrs. Caroline Astor attended, her presence providing crucial social validation. Mrs. Astor's attendance at any event marked it as acceptable to New York's highest society. Her approval of Marble House and her visible enjoyment of the evening effectively ended any possible criticism of Alva's architectural ambitions. The social gatekeeper had opened the gates. Musical entertainment during the evening featured professional performers, possibly including musicians brought from New York specifically for the event. The performances occurred in the ballroom or gold room, providing cultural programming that elevated the evening beyond mere social gathering to cultural event. The music selection, performance quality, and presentation all contributed to the evening's overall message about cultivation and European sophistication. The cost of the single evening is difficult to establish with precision from historical records, but estimates suggest expenditures of tens of thousands of dollars on flowers, food, wine, entertainment, and service staff. In 1892 terms, this represented luxury few could afford even for special occasions. That Alva spent such sums for single evening's entertainment demonstrated both Vanderbilt wealth and her commitment to social positioning through display. The evening succeeded completely by every measurable standard. The guests praised the house, the entertainment, and Alva's achievement. Newport society acknowledged that Marble House represented new standard for cottage design and decoration. The competition Alva intended was over before it fully began. She had won, but the marriage that funded the victory was already failing. The triumph at Marble House marked the beginning of the end for Alva and William's relationship.
Chapter 7. The Marriage. Behind the marble, William and Alva's growing distance.
The marriage between William Kissam Vanderbilt and Alva Smith was contracted in 1875 primarily as strategic alliance rather than romantic partnership. Both parties understood the transaction. Alva brought social sophistication and European cultural knowledge to the Vanderbilt family. William provided access to Vanderbilt wealth and the social positioning that money could purchase. The arrangement functioned adequately for its purposes during the first decade. William's personality differed substantially from Alva's driving ambition and social focus. He enjoyed yachting, horse racing, and relatively quiet pursuits among male friends. Society entertaining interested him less than it interested his wife. He funded Alva's social projects and attended necessary events, but rarely initiated social activities himself. The distinction between Alva's aggressive social climbing and William's passive wealth possession grew more evident as years passed. 3 children were born during the marriage. Consuelo, born in 1877, was the eldest and only daughter. 2 sons, William Kissam Vanderbilt II and Harold Sterling Vanderbilt, followed in 1878 and 1884. The children's upbringing reflected Alva's values more than William's. She supervised their education, determined their activities, and planned their futures with the same intensity she applied to architectural projects and social campaigns. Alva's parenting approach emphasized European education, classical learning, and preparation for social roles she had determined in advance. The children, particularly Consuelo, lived highly controlled lives with limited freedom to develop independent interests or relationships. Alva's intensity about children's development created household atmosphere of demanding expectations and constant supervision. William's involvement in children's daily lives was reportedly minimal. This was not unusual for wealthy fathers in the era, but the contrast between Alva's controlling intensity and William's distance was notable, even by contemporary standards. The children understood their mother as the dominant parental figure and primary authority in their lives. By the early 1890s, William and Alva lived increasingly separate lives within their shared house. William spent time on his yacht, the Alva, ironically named for his wife, though it represented his escape from her sphere. He maintained apartments in New York, separate from family spaces. His interests drew him away from the social obligations Alva pursued relentlessly. Rumors circulated in society about William's relationships with other women. The historical record provides limited direct evidence, but contemporary accounts and later statements suggest William conducted affairs that violated marital expectations, even by Gilded Age standards, where wealthy men's discretion was often tolerated to maintain care. The specific details remain somewhat unclear, but the general pattern of marital infidelity appears documented sufficiently to have provided grounds for divorce. Alva's response to William's behavior was initially tolerance, possibly strategic. Divorce in the 1890s carried enormous social risk. Women who divorced, regardless of grounds, faced potential ostracism from the society Alva had worked to conquer. The calculation involved weighing continued unhappy marriage against the possibility of social exile. Marble House represented peak of their marriage's material success and simultaneous evidence of its emotional failure. The house was entirely Alva's project. William paid for it, but contributed little to design, decoration, or social use. The building stood as monument to Alva's vision, funded by William's money, a relationship structure characterizing their entire marriage. The arrangement that had functioned adequately for nearly 2 decades was ended. Alva had achieved her social goals. The continued marriage no longer served purposes important enough to maintain the pretense. By 1893, separation was inevitable. The question was not whether the marriage would end, but how the ending would be managed and what consequences would follow.
Chapter 8. Consuelo. the daughter raised to be a duchess.
Consuelo Vanderbilt was born on March 2, 1877, at the Vanderbilt Mansion in New York. Her name honored Alva's close friend Consuelo Iznaga, who had married the Duke of Manchester in 1876, providing Alva with direct example of American woman achieving European aristocratic title through strategic marriage. The naming was prophetic. Consuelo's upbringing was rigorously controlled from earliest childhood. Alva supervised every aspect of her daughter's education and development. Private tutors provided instruction in languages, particularly French, in literature, art, history, and music. Consuelo learned to speak French fluently, to discuss European culture with sophistication, and to present herself according to highest social standards. The education prepared her specifically for role in international society. Physical discipline accompanied intellectual training. Consuelo was made to practice posture by walking with steel rods strapped to her back to ensure perfect carriage. Dance instruction developed grace and movement. Dress and grooming received constant attention. Every element of physical presentation was cultivated deliberately to create young women of exceptional beauty and perfect deportment. By her mid-teens, Consuelo was recognized widely as one of the most beautiful young women in American society. Tall, with dark hair, elegant features, and the bearing her training had instilled, she attracted attention at every social gathering. Her beauty was asset in the marriage market Alva was preparing her to enter, not as bride for American industrialist, but as prize for impoverished European aristocrat. The transatlantic marriage market flourished in the 1880s and 90s. American fortunes sought European titles. European aristocrats, particularly British nobility with estates but diminished incomes, sought American money. Marriages united cash-poor dukes with title-seeking heiresses, in arrangements benefiting both parties financially and socially. The transactions were understood explicitly. Love was optional. Practical benefits were mandatory. Alva identified Charles Richard John Spencer Churchill, 9th Duke of Marlborough, as appropriate match for Consuelo. The Duke, born in 1871, was 6 years older than Consuelo and had inherited his title and estates in 1892 at age 21. Blenheim Palace, the Spencer Churchill family seat in Oxfordshire, was magnificent but deteriorating. The estate required substantial funds for maintenance and restoration. The Duke needed money. Consuelo had money. The courtship was orchestrated by Alva with precision, matching her architectural projects. Opportunities for the Duke and Consuelo to meet were arranged. Social settings promoted interaction. The relationship progressed according to Alva's timeline and specifications. The Duke understood the arrangement's financial terms. Consuelo understood her mother's expectations. Consuelo herself preferred Winthrop Rutherford, an American from appropriate background whom she had met and developed feelings for independently of her mother's planning. Rutherford represented what Consuelo wanted: marriage based on affection, life in America near family and familiar settings, escape from her mother's controlling intensity. Alva rejected this completely. American marriage, regardless of Rutherford's suitability, did not advance Alva's plans. The pressure Alva applied to ensure Consuelo's compliance was documented later in Consuelo's memoir. Emotional manipulation, appeals to duty, threats of consequences if Consuelo refused, all were deployed systematically. Alva informed Consuelo that refusing the Duke would kill her, Alva, from grief and disappointment. She stated that Consuelo's duty to family required accepting the marriage regardless of personal feelings. She cut off contact with Rutherford and prevented communication. William Kay's role in his daughter's marriage arrangements was characteristically minimal. He apparently raised no objections to Alva's plans and offered no support to Consuelo's preferences. The father, who might have intervened, remained absent from the crucial decisions about his daughter's future. In summer 1895, Consuelo accepted the Duke of Marlborough's proposal. The acceptance came after intense pressure and with full knowledge that she was sacrificing personal happiness to maternal demands and family expectations. The engagement was announced. Preparations for the wedding began. Marble House would be the setting for much of the pre-wedding period, the palace serving as backdrop for the creation of a duchess.
Chapter 9, March 1895. The divorce that shocked society.
In March 1895, Alva Vanderbilt filed for divorce from William Kissam Vanderbilt in New York courts. The filing created immediate scandal. Divorce among wealthy New York families was rare and socially catastrophic in the 1890s. Women who divorced, regardless of grounds or fault, risked complete social ostracism. The institution of marriage was considered sacred, and its dissolution suggested moral failure. The grounds Alva cited were adultery, specifically William's relationships with other women. New York divorce law at the time recognized adultery as legitimate cause for dissolution of marriage. Alva's legal team presented evidence of William's infidelities, documentation sufficient for courts to grant the divorce. The specific details were managed to provide legal justification while avoiding excessive public scandal that might damage the Vanderbilt family name more than necessary. The legal proceedings moved with remarkable speed by standards of the era. Divorce cases often dragged through courts for months or years. Alva's divorce was granted within weeks of filing. The expedited timeline suggests either cooperation from William, who may have welcomed release from the marriage, or sufficient legal pressure and evidence that contest was pointless. Historical records suggest William did not fight the proceedings. The financial settlement was substantial. Alva received cash payment reported at approximately $10 million, though exact figures varied in different accounts. She also received Marble House outright as part of the property division. The Newport cottage became her sole possession, no longer technically Vanderbilt family property, but Alva's personal estate. The settlement ensured her financial independence and secured her primary architectural achievement. Public reaction divided between shock and fascination. Newspapers covered the divorce extensively, though with relative restraint compared to modern media treatment. Society columns discussed the scandal in veiled language. The question everyone asked was whether Alva would survive socially. Divorce carried such stigma that even wealthy, well-connected women who divorced often found themselves excluded from events and homes that had previously welcomed them. Alva's calculation proved correct. Her position in society was secure enough to withstand the scandal. The fortune she retained ensured continued wealth display. Her personality was forceful enough that few people wished to challenge her directly. Most importantly, her social achievements over the previous decade had established her as force that could not be easily dismissed or ignored. She had broken through Mrs. Astor's barriers once. She would not be easily expelled. The timing of the divorce, shortly before Consuelo's wedding to the Duke of Marlborough, was notable. Some historical accounts suggest Alva waited until after securing Consuelo's engagement before filing for divorce, ensuring the advantageous marriage would proceed regardless of scandal. Other interpretations suggest the divorce and the wedding were separate decisions that coincidentally overlapped. The exact motivation remains subject to historical debate. William Kay's response to the divorce was notably quiet. He did not contest the proceedings publicly. He accepted the settlement terms. Within relatively short period after the divorce was finalized, he remarried. His second wife was Anne Harriman Sands Rutherford, herself previously divorced. The marriage suggested William preferred quieter life than Alva had provided. His second marriage lacked the social intensity and ambitious entertaining that had characterized life with Alva. The children's positions became complicated. Consuelo was engaged and would soon leave for England. The sons, William K. II and Harold, divided time between parents. The family structure that had occupied Marble House and the Fifth Avenue mansion was permanently dissolved. Alva was now divorced, independently wealthy, and in sole possession of her architectural masterpiece. The social war she had fought was won. The marriage that had funded the campaign was ended. She was free to pursue new objectives. The first objective was completing Consuelo's transformation into a duchess.
Chapter 10. November 1895. Forcing a duchess at Marble House.
The wedding of Consuelo Vanderbilt and Charles Spencer Churchill, 9th Duke of Marlborough, occurred on November 6, 1895, at St. Thomas Church on Fifth Avenue in New York. The ceremony was not held at Marble House, but the Newport estate served as setting for much of the preparation during the summer and fall preceding the wedding. Consuelo spent portions of summer 1895 at Marble House, ostensibly preparing for her marriage, actually enduring the final months of life as unmarried American woman. Her emotional state during this period was documented later in her memoir, The Glitter and the Gold, published in 1952. She described feeling trapped, desperate, and resigned to fate she had not chosen but could not escape. The prenuptial arrangements included detailed financial terms. The Duke received $2.5 million in cash immediately upon marriage, paid by William K. Vanderbilt as settlement. Additionally, Consuelo would receive annual income of $100,000 for life. These were not gifts, but contractual obligations, explicitly negotiated and legally documented. The marriage was financial transaction as much as social alliance. The trousseau prepared for Consuelo represented enormous expenditure on clothing, jewelry, and accessories necessary for her new role as Duchess. The garments were created by European and American dressmakers to specifications reflecting her future position. The jewelry included pieces purchased specifically for the wedding and life in English aristocratic circles. The total cost of preparation reportedly exceeded hundreds of thousands of dollars. Marble House during this period functioned as stage for final preparations and as monument to what Alva had achieved. The house represented her successful social campaign. Her daughter's impending marriage to British Duke represented ultimate validation of that campaign. American wealth, deployed strategically, had purchased entry into European aristocracy. The goal set decades earlier was being realized. The wedding itself was an elaborate spectacle. St. Thomas Church was decorated extensively with flowers and fabric. The guest list included both American society and British aristocratic representatives. The ceremony followed episcopal ritual with full traditional elements. Consuelo wore a white satin gown with train reportedly measuring several yards in length. The visual presentation was designed to communicate importance and grandeur appropriate to Union of Vanderbilt money and Marlborough title. Consuelo's emotional state on her wedding day was reportedly miserable. Historical accounts, including her own later memoir, describe her crying throughout the morning before the ceremony. She felt coerced into marriage she did not want, separated from the man she loved, and trapped by maternal demands and social expectations she could not resist. The wedding proceeded despite her distress. The Duke's demeanor during the ceremony was correct, but not warm. He understood the arrangement's terms and accepted them. The marriage would provide funds to maintain Blenheim Palace and support appropriate aristocratic lifestyle. Personal affection was not required term in the contract. Following the ceremony, the newly married Duke and Duchess of Marlborough departed for a wedding trip and then journeyed to England. Consuelo left America, left her family, and entered life in English country estate among aristocratic society, whose rules and expectations differed substantially from what she had known. She was 18 years old. Alva had achieved her objective. Her daughter was now Duchess of Marlborough, title holder in one of England's most prominent aristocratic families. The social positioning Alva had fought for decades to establish was completed. An American woman of Alva's generation could not become Duchess herself, but she could create a Duchess from her daughter. The cost of the achievement, measured in Consuelo's happiness and autonomy, apparently did not weigh heavily enough to change Alva's actions. The goal mattered more than the method or the consequences for others. Marble House stood in Newport, monument to the campaign that had just reached its conclusion.
Chapter 11. Oliver Belmont. The Second Marriage in Chinese Tea House.
Oliver Hazard Perry Belmont entered Alva's life during the period surrounding her divorce from William K. Vanderbilt. Oliver, born in 1858 to August Belmont and Caroline Perry, came from established Newport and New York society. The Belmont name carried significant weight in financial and social circles. August Belmont had represented Rothschild banking interests in America and had served as chairman of the Democratic National Committee. Oliver inherited both wealth and social position, which allowed him to move comfortably within elite circles and pursue his personal passions without constraint. Oliver's own marital history was complicated. He had married Sarah Swan Whiting in 1881, but the marriage ended in divorce in 1896. Divorce in his case, as in Alva's, carried social consequences, though perhaps somewhat less severe for men than women. His status as a divorced man when he began a relationship with Alva meant both parties entered their eventual marriage with similar backgrounds of failed first marriages, a rare situation in Gilded Age high society. Both had experienced the social scrutiny and emotional strain associated with dissolving high-profile marriages, which may have given them a degree of mutual understanding and resilience uncommon among their peers. Oliver's interests differed from William K. Vanderbilt's, but were equally extravagant. He maintained a passionate interest in horses, to the extent that he designed his Newport estate, Belcourt Castle, with the ground floor devoted primarily to stables. The horses lived in architectural luxury equal to or exceeding human accommodations in many homes. This emphasis on equestrian facilities reflected both his personal tastes and his desire to signal status through cultivated refinement. He was also known to attend horse racing events in New York and Newport, where his horses frequently competed, further cementing his place in elite sporting and social circles. Alva and Oliver married in January 1896, less than 1 year after her divorce from William K. was finalized. The relatively quick remarriage raised some eyebrows in society, but both parties were sufficiently established and wealthy. The consequences were minimal. The marriage represented a partnership between two strong personalities with significant resources and social positions to maintain. While Alva's first marriage had been dominated by her husband's priorities, her union with Oliver allowed her to pursue her own interests more fully, particularly in cultural, architectural, and social reform arenas. The marriage appeared to function as a genuine partnership more than Alva's first marriage had. Oliver shared some of Alva's interests in architecture and cultural pursuits, including interior design design and estate improvement. He accepted and possibly encouraged her growing interest in social reform and women's rights. The relationship allowed Alva more personal autonomy than she had experienced as William K's wife, though this reflected both the different personality of her second husband and her own increased independence following divorce and financial settlement. Together, they maintained a lifestyle that balanced social visibility with personal fulfillment, blending traditional Gilded Age opulence with a growing engagement in civic and political matters. Alva continued using Marble House as her primary Newport residence after marrying Oliver, though she also spent time at Belcourt Castle. The two estates stood on Bellevue Avenue, making movement between them convenient. Marble House remained Alva's property specifically, not joint marital property, giving her complete control over its use and modification. She undertook renovations and redecorations that reflected her personal tastes and ambitions, demonstrating both her aesthetic sensibility and her ability to exercise authority over one of Newport's most prominent homes. In 1913, Alva commissioned an addition to Marble House that reflected her evolving interests and social activities. The Chinese tea house was constructed on the cliff edge of Marble House property, overlooking the ocean. The structure featured pagoda-style architecture, an exotic design vocabulary contrasting dramatically with Marble House's classical French references. This choice was both a stylistic statement and a practical innovation, demonstrating Alva's ability to blend aesthetic appeal with functional purpose. The tea house served specific purposes beyond aesthetic novelty. It provided an intimate setting for gatherings that were ostensibly social but increasingly political. By 1913, Alva was deeply involved in the women's suffrage movement. The tea house became a meeting place for suffrage activists, discussions about voting rights, and strategic planning sessions disguised as fashionable tea parties. The architectural choice was strategic. The exotic design attracted attention, the ocean view setting created a dramatic backdrop, and the intimate scale allowed focused conversations rather than large formal gatherings. The tea house effectively extended Marble House's utility while adapting the estate to Alva's changing priorities and public role. Oliver Belmont died in 1908 relatively suddenly. His death left Alva widowed for the second time, though now with even greater wealth through inheritance of Oliver's estate in addition to her settlement from William K. She inherited Belcourt Castle and Oliver's other properties, giving her multiple significant real estate holdings in Newport. The second widowhood marked a turning point. Alva, now in her mid-50s, was enormously wealthy, socially established beyond question, and increasingly focused on political causes rather than social display. Marble House would serve new purposes in this phase of her life, evolving from a symbol of Gilded Age luxury to a center for social activism and strategic engagement with the women's suffrage movement, reflecting both her personal growth and her enduring influence in American society.
Chapter 12. Alva the Suffragist, when a palace became a platform.
Alva Vanderbilt Belmont's transformation into a women's suffrage activist occurred gradually during the first decade of the 1900s. The origins of her political consciousness remain somewhat unclear in the historical record, but they likely stemmed from personal experiences with marriage, divorce, and recognition of women's legal powerlessness in areas that affected her directly. Witnessing the limitations imposed by the legal system, particularly regarding property rights and personal autonomy, likely awakened in her a sense of urgency for broader social change. Under laws prevailing during Alva's adult life, married women had limited property rights, no guaranteed custody of children in divorce, and no political voice through voting. Alva had navigated these constraints successfully through wealth and force of personality, yet she understood that most women lacked the resources or social leverage to overcome these legal disabilities. Her experience with controlling her daughter Consuelo's marriage while demonstrating maternal influence also may have revealed to her the stark realities of how women's choices were constrained by social and legal structures. In a society where a woman's public and private agency was severely restricted, these experiences underscored the need for systemic reform. The women's suffrage movement in America had existed since the mid-1800s, with organized campaigns beginning at Seneca Falls in 1848. By the early 1900s, the movement had developed national organization and increasingly militant tactics, particularly influenced by British suffragettes' confrontational approaches. American suffragists pursued both state-by-state campaigns for voting rights and pressure for a federal constitutional amendment. It was into this increasingly structured and strategic movement that Alva Vanderbilt Belmont inserted herself, bringing wealth, social prominence, and organizational skills. Alva became involved with the National American Women's Suffrage Association, NASA, and later with Alice Hall's more militant Congressional Union, which became the National Woman's Party in 1916. Her involvement was not symbolic or purely social. She committed substantial financial resources, provided meeting spaces, and actively participated educated in strategic planning and public advocacy. Her wealth made her an invaluable asset to the movement, enabling campaigns to function on a scale that might have otherwise been impossible. Suffrage campaigns required funding for materials, events, lobbying, and organizational operations. Alva reportedly contributed hundreds of thousands of dollars over the course of her involvement, paying for organizing staff salaries, printing literature, and sustaining long-term advocacy infrastructure. Marble House became a central venue for suffrage activities, particularly after the Chinese Tea House was completed in 1913. Alva hosted gatherings that combined social elements with political organizing. The setting was deliberately chosen. Holding suffrage meetings in a gilded Newport mansion sent a powerful message that women's voting rights were supported by socially prominent, wealthy women, not just by radical outsiders. In August 1914, Alva organized a significant suffrage conference at Marble House, bringing together activists from multiple organizations to coordinate strategy and discuss tactics. The event received newspaper coverage that mixed society reporting with political content, exactly the combination Alva intended. By linking suffrage to elite social spaces, she forced the media and public to engage seriously with the cause. The Chinese Tea House hosted smaller, more focused meetings. Suffragists gathered in the pagoda overlooking the ocean to discuss legislation, plan demonstrations, and coordinate lobbying efforts. The exotic setting provided both practical and symbolic value. It created an atmosphere of discretion for serious political work, while also enhancing the visibility and allure of the movement. The tea house gatherings became widely known in suffrage circles, adding glamour and social credibility to political organizing that might otherwise have seemed dry or inaccessible. Alva's public advocacy extended beyond Marble House. She spoke at suffrage events in multiple cities, wrote for publications, and leveraged her social prominence to gain access to politicians and the press. Newspapers reported her statements not merely for their political content, but because she was Alva Vanderbilt Belmont, a figure of immense fame and influence. She deliberately exploited her social position for political purposes, turning public fascination with her wealth and lifestyle into attention for the suffrage cause. Critics noted a tension between Alva's immense wealth and her advocacy for broader women's rights, pointing to the apparent contradiction between living in marble palaces and championing the interests of working-class women. Alva herself did not perceive a contradiction. She argued that all women, regardless of class, faced legal disabilities under laws that denied them voting rights and equal legal standing. In her view, the suffrage cause could and should unite women across class divisions. By the late 1910s, Alva's priorities had shifted substantially. Social competition and conspicuous display, once driving forces behind Marble House's construction, became secondary to political activism. The palace, originally built for entertainment and display, had been repurposed into a center for strategy, planning, and advocacy. Marble House's role in her life had changed completely, becoming an emblem of her commitment to women's suffrage and social reform.
Chapter 13. The Abandonment. Why Alva left Marble House behind.
Alva Vanderbilt Belmont's gradual disengagement from Marble House began during the 1910s and accelerated through the 1920s. The process was not the result of a sudden decision or dramatic exit, but rather a slow withdrawal as other priorities claimed her attention and other residences better suited her evolving lifestyle. This shift reflected both personal circumstances and broader social, economic, and political changes, signaling a transformation in the role the mansion played in her life. Multiple factors contributed to this change. By the 1910s, Alva owned several properties, including Marble House, Belcourt Castle in Newport, a mansion in New York, and multiple estates in France. The multiplication of residences required dividing her time among many locations, diluting the centrality of any single home. Marble House, which had been her primary Newport residence through the 1890s and early 1900s, gradually became one option among several rather than the focal point of her life. Her suffrage work increasingly demanded her presence in locations where political activities were concentrated. Washington, D.C. became essential as the center of the federal amendment campaign, while New York remained the hub of organizational work, strategic planning, and fundraising. Newport, though still hosting the summer social season, was no longer a practical base for the suffrage movement. Spending entire summers at Marble House became less feasible as her commitments pulled her elsewhere, encased her stand Tasor, making the mansion less central to her daily life and sense of purpose. The financial financial burden of maintaining Marble House was substantial, even for someone of Alva's wealth. The estate required year-round staff for basic maintenance, security, and readiness for occupancy. Full operation during the summer social season demanded dozens of specialized servants. Heating alone during the winter months was enormous, and the ongoing expenses quickly added up to tens of thousands of dollars annually, even when the house was only sporadically used. Additionally, the federal income tax, instituted in 1913 following ratification of the 16th Amendment, altered financial calculations for wealthy Americans. Maintaining multiple large estates became more burdensome when post-tax, rather than pre-tax, income was funding these expenditures. The social season in Newport itself was declining from its Gilded Age peak. By the 1920s, new wealthy families emerged with different priorities, and intensive summer social competition seemed increasingly antiquated. Younger generations were less invested in preserving the formal summer court in Rhode Island, and the established structure of Newport society was evolving from a living institution into a historical artifact. For Alva, whose early achievements had been rooted in mastering this social landscape, the changing environment reduced the practical and symbolic utility of Marble House. Alva was also aging. Born in 1853, she was in her 60s. During the 1920s, maintaining Marble House at the high level of operation she had established required energy and focus that she no longer possessed or desired to expend. The mansion had been conceived and completed during her late 30s and early 40s, when her vigor, ambition, and social drive were at their peak. By the 1920s, her priorities and capabilities had shifted. Most fundamentally, Marble House had fulfilled its original purpose. The mansion had been a tool for social competition, a symbol of achievement, and a statement of personal and familial prestige. Those objectives had been achieved decades earlier, and the symbolic value of the house had been largely exhausted. Its role in defining her social identity was no longer central, as Alva had outgrown the need for external validation through architecture and opulence. The suffrage campaign and its subsequent successes provided Alva with a more meaningful and enduring focus. The 19th Amendment, ratified in 1920, granted women the right to vote nationally, a culmination of years of activism, strategic planning, and financial support in which Alva had played a key role. This political victory offered a sense of accomplishment far surpassing any social triumph Marble House had represented, reinforcing her shift in priorities from gilded display to civic engagement. Alva did not formally announce the closure or abandonment of Marble House. She gradually spent less time there, then almost none, and eventually none at all. Caretaker staff maintained the building, ensuring its upkeep, but her presence ceased. The mansion remained, but Alva had moved beyond it, physically, socially, and symbolically. The withdrawal was not a failure or repudiation of her past achievements. It was an evolution. She had built Marble House as a statement of social power, but she had transcended the need for such states. By the 1920s, Alva Vanderbilt Belmont had expanded her influence far beyond the walls of any mansion, dedicating herself to political causes and societal change that carried far greater significance than even the most magnificent of her residences. Marble House remained a monument, but Alva had built beyond it, into history itself.
Chapter 14. Marble House in Limbo. The Years of Emptiness.
Through the 1920s, Marble House stood largely empty, maintained by minimal staff but unoccupied by its owner. The building remained in good physical condition through continued maintenance, yet the absence of active use created an atmosphere of suspension, as though the house were waiting for a purpose that no longer existed. Its rooms, once filled with music, conversation, and the elaborate rituals of high society, now echoed only with silence. The grandeur of the mansion was preserved, but the vitality that had given it meaning was absent. The staff maintaining Marble House during this period performed essential functions without the intensive activity that full occupancy required. Basic cleaning prevented deterioration of marble surfaces and delicate furnishings. Climate control systems were monitored to prevent damage from temperature and humidity extremes, while the grounds were kept trimmed and orderly. Security measures were enforced to prevent vandalism or theft. Yet the dozens of specialized servants necessary for entertaining, running daily household operations, and attending to guests were no longer present. The gold room sat silent, its elaborate decoration protected with sheets. The ballroom, once alive with dancers and musicians, remained empty. The dining room held no elaborate meals, and guest bedrooms housed no visitors. In essence, the building functioned as a storage facility for its own contents, preserving itself in the absence of active life. Other Newport cottages faced similar circumstances. The Gilded Age social structure that had created these palaces was dissolved. The intensive summer seasons of the 1890s had no equivalent in the 1920s. Families that had maintained Newport cottages for decades decades, increasingly questioned the expense and utility of properties that required enormous resources to operate. Marble House, with its $11 million of construction and furnishing costs, symbolized the extreme of such expenditure, a monument to social ambition that no longer aligned with prevailing norms. The broader American economic and social landscape was shifting dramatically. The 1920s saw new wealth arising from different industries, including finance, manufacturing, and emerging entertainment sectors. Younger generations of wealthy Americans exhibited different social patterns and priorities, showing less interest in formal European-style social competition. The values that had motivated the construction of Marble House and other estates seemed increasingly remote, even antiquated. The stock market crash of October 1929 and the subsequent Great Depression created additional pressure on maintaining expensive estates. Even families who survived financial losses were forced to reconsider the practicality of sustaining marble palaces in Newport, and many properties were sold, donated, or demolished during the 1930s. Alva spent these years primarily in New York and Paris. She continued her suffrage-related work and advocacy for women's legal rights. Even after the 19th Amendment's passage, international women's rights became her primary focus. She traveled extensively, spoke publicly, and funded organizations dedicated to gender equality in legal and social domains. Despite her advancing age, approaching 80, her energy for causes she valued remained remarkable. She maintained correspondence with activists, contributed financially to movements, and remained engaged in political and social reform long after her direct involvement in Newport society had ended. Marble House during these years represented a completed chapter in Alva's life. The mansion existed as a monument to ambitions that had been achieved and then superseded. The social position the house had been built to establish had been won in the 1890s. By the 1920s and 1930s, her political consciousness and advocacy had rendered that social position less significant than it had once been. The house stood as a testament to Gilded Age wealth and taste, yet its purpose had shifted from functional home to historical artifact. The building was neither sold nor demolished during Alva's lifetime. It remained her property, maintained adequately but unused. The investment of $11 million in construction and furnishing sat idle, generating no financial return, though perhaps providing the satisfaction of permanent achievement and a symbol of enduring legacy. World War II, approaching at the end of the 1930s, would fundamentally alter Newport and the social structures that had created its cottage era. Portions of Newport would be repurposed for military use, and the lavish summer social season would be suspended indefinitely. The world that had built Marble House would be irrevocably changed. The mansion would either need to find a new purpose or face eventual demolition, standing as both relic and reminder of an era that had passed.
Chapter 15. January 1933. Alva's death and the house she left.
Alva Erskine Smith Vanderbilt Belmont died on January 26, 1933 in Paris, France. She was 79 years old, having lived through the Civil War, Reconstruction, the Gilded Age, World War I, the achievement of women's suffrage, and into the Great Depression. Her life spanned a period of extraordinary American transformation, and she had been an active participant in shaping several of those transformations. From the rise of the Vanderbilts and Belmonts to the broader social and political movements of her time, Alva's life intersected with key moments in U.S. history, reflecting both privilege and influence. The obituaries published in American and European newspapers documented her social achievements, her two prominent marriages, her daughter Consuelo's ducal marriage, and her later suffrage activism. The coverage reflected a degree of uncertainty about how to characterize her legacy. Was she primarily a social climber who built marble palaces to cement her position in elite society, or a political activist who advanced women's rights through advocacy, financial support, and public visibility? The tension between these interpretations ran through contemporary assessments and continues to inform historical evaluations. Scholars often emphasize her dual role, a woman of immense social influence who later leveraged that influence to pursue substantial political and social change. Her estate was complex, encompassing multiple properties across America and Europe, extensive investments, and substantial remaining wealth despite decades of expensive living and generous political donations. The disposition of her estate required careful legal processing, extending over several months. Various beneficiaries included family members, philanthropic organizations, and ongoing support for causes she had championed, including women's suffrage and broader social reforms. Marble House, as a specific property within the estate, passed initially to family control. Questions immediately arose about its future use. The mansion's substantial upkeep costs made continued private occupancy difficult, while selling the property was challenging due to its highly specialized design and limited market for marble palaces during the Depression. During the 1930s and 1940s, Marble House remained in family possession but saw minimal use. The Great Depression made maintaining such expensive properties difficult to justify. The onset of World War II further altered Newport's landscape. Portions of the city, including some estates, were repurposed for military use. The elaborate summer social season that had once justified the construction of these grand cottages effectively ended, and Newport's character underwent a fundamental shift. Post-war America showed little interest in maintaining Gilded Age social structures. Many estates were seen as costly relics of an era increasingly viewed as extravagant or outdated. Some cottages were demolished, their materials salvaged, or their grounds repurposed, while others were sold to institutions for use as schools, museums, or other public or semi-public functions. Marble House's fate remained uncertain through the 1940s and 1950s. Although it was an extraordinary example of Gilded Age architecture, extraordinary buildings without a clear contemporary purpose often faced precarious futures. The cost of maintaining marble and gilded interiors was prohibitive for a private residence, and commercial uses appeared unsuitable. Demolition, while regrettable to historians and preservationists, remained a real possibility. In 1963, 30 years after Alva's death, the Preservation Society of Newport County purchased Marble House for $90,000, a tiny fraction of the $11 million Alva had originally spent constructing and furnishing the estate. The disparity reflected both changed economic conditions and the diminished market for elaborate private palaces. The Preservation Society's mission was to protect Newport's architectural heritage by converting historic cottages into museums. Marble House was thus transformed from private residence into public institution, open to tours, and preserved as a historical artifact rather than a lived-in home. As a museum, Marble House attracts thousands of visitors annually. Tourists walk through the Gold Room, admire the elaborate decoration, and learn about Gilded Age Newport while hearing stories of Alva Vanderbilt Belmont and the era she represented. The building serves an educational purpose, teaching architectural history, social history, and the complex legacy of American wealth in the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Preservation also allows for nuanced historical interpretation. Museums can explore complicated aspects of Alva's life, her role as both social climber and suffragist, as both controlling mother and political activist, presenting a fuller picture than would have been possible during her lifetime. Marble House endures, transformed but intact, as a monument to ambitions both achieved and abandoned. Its survival offers insight into the social, political, and cultural currents of the Gilded Age and beyond, allowing contemporary audiences to engage with the legacy of a woman who shaped her world and then moved beyond it, leaving her mark on history and architecture alike. Marble House stands today on Bellevue Avenue, its white marble facade as perfect as when construction was completed in 1892. Visitors enter through the same doors Gilded Age guests used. They walk through the Gold Room, where Alva Vanderbilt once received Newport society. They tour bedrooms, dining rooms, and service spaces that housed elaborate lifestyle now vanished. What tourists see is monument frozen in time, preserved exactly as it appeared at peak of Gilded Age excess. What they cannot see is the woman who created it, who used it, and who walked away from it when it no longer served her purposes. Alva Vanderbilt built Marble House as weapon in social competition, physical manifestation of ambition and will. She succeeded completely. The house established her position, validated her taste, and proved that strategic deployment of wealth could purchase social standing. The victory was total. Then she moved on. The suffrage cause, the political activism, the advocacy for women's rights, these mattered more than gilded walls and marble halls. The house that had been central to her identity in the 1890s became irrelevant by the 1920s. She outgrew it as one outgrows childhood home, with neither regret nor sentimentality. Marble House remains perfect and empty, monument to ambitions achieved and then abandoned. The building endures as Alva intended, permanent, beautiful, and extraordinary. But the woman who built it proved more extraordinary than her creation. She was never the palace. The palace was merely tools she used, then set aside when finished. If you found this exploration of Marble House and Alva Vanderbilt's complex legacy valuable, please consider subscribing for more documentaries about Gilded Age architecture and the remarkable lives behind America's grandest estates. Thank you for watching.